at the podium.
Tough crowd. I appreciate your patience. I must tell you that I have received a tremendous amount of calls today, so many that I'm having a very difficult time trying to keep up with the inquiries. And unfortunately, I'm not sure that I have a whole lot more information for you today on some of the things that you're asking questions about, primarily because we still have some of the questions ourselves. As a police department and as a city, we've got questions that are unanswered for us, but will take time for us to get some of those answers. But let me tell you a little bit more of what I know about. Let me talk a little bit about some of the main questions that I am receiving today, and that is I'll share with you that the suspect is still in serious condition in a local hospital. We are not releasing the hospital that he is currently at for safety reasons, and so that we won't have to have as much manpower at a location. So please bear with us on that. Also, we do not release the name of a criminal suspect until the suspect has been formally charged for liability reasons for the police department. That is our practice and has been our practice for years. We have 2 or 3 other cases from this weekend alone, an officer-involved shooting and a traffic fatality, where we are doing the same thing. And so I understand that many of you have different sources that have identified a possible suspect in this or who have named a suspect. Certainly we're okay with that. We're just not the source of the information until someone has been charged, and we're not there yet. We are probably looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of the next 4 to 6 days as the early release period for a possible booking on the suspect in this case at this time. So that is a time frame that is given to us now from the medical staff where he is at, that's about the earliest we can look for. So questions pertaining to the process from there is understanding that we are being asked if he will be taken to a state hospital or if he will be taken to the county jail. That's not a decision that we have to make. Every suspect is booked into the jail. The reasons of insanity are a burden of proof upon the defendant, and so we book into jail, and then proceedings will start from there as to where they will take this in that court process. I have been asked about calls for service because of some residents that have been talking about the response to that neighborhood or that area. I can tell you that at least this morning I have done some preliminary searching of our records for calls for service. Understand there's 2 locations there. There are the front townhomes, if you will, or apartments, and then the rear set of apartments. The 5 are in the rear. So there's 2 addresses that we're dealing with there, 5153 North 13th Place, and we're also dealing with 5155 North 13th Place, and then respectfully, all of those have a unit 1 through 4 or 1 through 5 at those. Specifically, we are dealing with 5153 North 13th Place, unit number 1. Unit number 3 is the location from which the witness came that many of you have spoken with before. I tell you that because calls for service are generated from those 2 different apartments. I'll start by telling you that the suspect and the victim from this homicide have only resided at that complex for between 2 and 3 months. They have not been there any longer than 3 months at this point. During that time period, we have had 5 calls for service that either named them or their specific apartment. The first call was on June 1st. It was a reported domestic violence between the victim and the suspect. A male caller was reporting that he had been stabbed by a female at that location. When officers arrived, he had no injury. He admitted to drug use that night. No crime was established by the officers. On June the 7th, we responded to a Czech welfare call. A crisis team had received a phone call from the male occupant of apartment number 1 indicating that he was on drugs and that he was going to burn people. They asked us to stand by that location until a crisis team could come out to assist, which our officers did. On June the 17th, we responded to a male and female fighting at this same location, apartment number 1. The female victim from this weekend was arrested on June 17th for allegations that she was attempting to stab the now suspect. He was listed as a victim in this report. She was booked for aggravated assault, and the charges were later dropped for no likelihood of conviction. On June 20th, the police department responded to this location, referenced 2 males in a verbal confrontation. It was the males from Unit 1 and 3, that is the witness caller from this week, and our suspect's apartment.
What was the date on that?
It was June 20th. During that call, they determined it was a verbal dispute between those 2 males. No crime was established. No report was taken. And on July 5th, we responded to a call of shots fired in that area and established that it was fireworks that someone indicated were being set off by Unit 1 or Unit 3. Those are the 5 calls for service at that location since the victim and suspect resided at that location. If you do a premise history, which I could do back to the beginning of the year, there were an additional 4 or 5 calls that related to the complex in general. A burglary, a criminal damage, and a shots fired were those types of calls. However, the victim and suspect did not reside there at the time.
Do we know what led up to this incident so far? What caused this stabbing?
Well, I'm not sure if you're talking about what made him.
Yeah.
I don't know that we're going to know the answer to that. I really don't. I think that when you read these calls that are coming in, most of them are self-mentioning methamphetamine and bath salts. When you take a look at this, obviously everyone is aware that the suspect had been convicted of a previous crime but found to be insane and spent time in the state hospital. I will tell you that we have interviewed the suspect. We have had an opportunity to talk to him. Most of the conversation, as I understand it, with our detective was delusional talking, statements incoherent, not making much sense. He did admit involvement in the homicide. He did indicate that he was the one that committed the homicide. He also indicated to us that he is the one that self-mutilated. He is the one that cut off his arm and took out his own eye. He also stabbed himself in the chest several times. Again, let's take that with what we're talking about with the detective in what was a very lengthy interview that made not much sense most of the time.
Was he high on anything?
Don't know at this point. That will take us lab results to figure that out.
Were there any signs that the victim was fighting back?
I don't know that in this scene that's going to be determined.
But he acknowledges he's the one who inflicted.
Again, it's a lengthy interview that is at best you can take parts of it like you would want to. There were certain things we were looking for to see if she had perhaps initiated some of this with him, is what sparked him maybe killing her when we were looking at an injury to his eye that he had sustained. Obviously, some of our concern in this particular case was something done to him that set him off. We don't have any indication of that from him at this point. He has acknowledged the killing of the female and the self-mutilation.
Do we know why he was released from the mental hospital?
We don't have any idea. I've seen probably the same thing that you've seen online that talks about a sentence that was 10 years that started in 2004. And so, looking at that, the time frame appears to be of such. We did learn from family and friends that he has only been at that location a short time and has recently been released from a mental health facility. The other thing that we have been working on, understanding that as a community or as the city of Phoenix, we are looking at, is it reasonable for them to be in the community? What was the terms of the release, and was that reasonable? That is something we are looking into, and I can tell you to this point we're not going to get the answer to that anytime soon. We have been denied access to his state mental health records, and we have been denied a subpoena for those as of this morning. So we will continue to work towards that. It doesn't mean that that is over. In this particular case, the county attorney will be assisting us in trying to obtain those records as we need them as hearings proceed, and we will likely get them for those types of hearings.
So the suspect met the victim in the state mental hospital?
Again, I would have to go off of news that I've heard. I do know that at least from family members, they indicated that to us. I haven't seen any court records or records from the state hospital that would support that. We have not seen any records from them.
From what you can tell if he served his full sentence at the state hospital?
I don't have any idea.
Was there a crisis team out at Saturdays of arrest?
There are crisis teams that are back out there today. There were 2 different teams that were sent out there over the weekend. We were contacted by Mercy Maricopa Regional, who provides community service for those types of incidents. They sent 2 response teams out over the weekend. They were sending one back out today. It is simply to help those in the complex try to deal with stress-related issues, debriefings, those types of things, the emotional response to this that they're living in that community. And so understanding that, we were very thankful to have their help out there. They have worked with our mental health liaison here at the police department to schedule and to set that up. And so we are grateful that they are out there assisting us in this capacity.
Is there a time frame as to how long this was all happening inside that department?
It's very difficult for us to pinpoint that time frame at this point. In talking with the investigators some this morning, we are believing that this occurred sometime between Friday morning and Saturday morning. And so we're really looking at almost a 24-hour time period where we don't have them accounted for when they were last seen by neighbors and friends in that area, and that is about a 24-hour period, and some of that would depend on what injuries occurred and what was done during that time frame. We may not get a better estimate than that.
Were there any signs inside the apartment that would lead you to believe they were using drugs at that time, or he was?
I am not aware of us making any drug arrest at that complex or having cause in this particular case to add that as a charge.
Has he admitted to being
No.
on drugs during the interview?
Not on this one that I am aware of. On previous contact with police, he has, but I am not aware of him talking about that during this interview.
You mentioned bath salts possibly being used in the past.
Mentioned in a call for service that was out there, and these are crude reports, if you will, from a standpoint of the data entry of a call-in, caller stating the following kind of thing. And so these are from calls for service. They are not the actual reports themselves that we're looking at, and so keep that in mind. Whether that was found to be at the end of it or tested for, we don't know. It is information that is in the calls for service. For some of you who have asked for call for service reports from that location, you will see those details in those when they are released, but they have to be redacted for caller information.
How's the mental stability right now of the witness? That's got to be really tough to see.
We have had a crisis team try to make contact with him again today. He's been a very good witness for us. He has been very cooperative. He has been very solid at this point. But as you can imagine, what he saw was very horrific. As with our responding officers that were trying to deal with this individual at the front door when they were greeted by him. It's a tough one.
Are you aware of any, some neighbors have said that officers have told them to stop calling about this residence? Are you aware that any officers, any dispatchers told them to stop calling about this residence?
No, other than what you're saying, I saw the report from an individual this morning in one of the media outlets, and I would tell you this. Everybody who's been mentioned so far in an article or a piece about this, we have spoken to in the neighborhood canvases and being out in the neighborhood. I understand that there can be some frustration when you have a case like this. There may be some frustration in our officers continually responding to a location also. Regardless of whether that's the case, we've responded out there to this particular apartment 5 times, and to the complex more than that. It is our job to respond to those. If someone made an emotional response to it, regardless of that, it is our job to go do it. Anything else?
And what about the complex itself? Is it just notorious for all kinds of criminal activity, or is it mostly nuisance calls?
Well, yeah, I mean, I certainly can't say that, Barb. I think you have to be able to compare it to other parts, and I haven't spent time comparing it. When I looked at the call for service history, to me it wasn't a shocking call for service history that we've had at that location for that 10-plex for the conversation that's gone on. But I'll leave that up to the neighbors and those that live around there to determine how they feel about the safety in their neighborhood, because ultimately that's, how they feel is what we need to police. And so it isn't overly high for a complex looking at it from that size for the calls of service. There are neighbors that apparently have just gotten used to this suspect standing outside yelling and at the top of his voice at different points, that they say it's the suspect and that's the way that he's been acting. It sounds like some may have almost gotten used to it.
Fred, can you go through the process now? I know you talked about getting a subpoena and so forth and access to medical or mental health records, et cetera. Where does it stand? And you said you will likely get access to that, or?
Well, yeah, I think that we're looking at, I think that when we take questions, and even a lot of questions that I have taken today are, why is he out? Is it reasonable that he is out? Was it prudent? All of those are things that I think are very fair questions. They're just ones that we can't answer. We don't have the answer to it. And so trying to look at documents or see documents that might give us some context to that is really what we're looking for. Does it change the outcome of what occurred for us at this point? No. Will it assist us as we move forward in a charging phase on this? Very likely it may. And so we will continue with interviews. We will continue to monitor the suspect in this particular case for his release. We will wait for the medical examiner's results for more information and details about the cause and nature of death and what was done to the victim in this particular case. So there certainly are a few things that are left remaining, and then obviously we will go into some sort of trial or hearing phase to determine his competency. And so that will be the work of the county attorney's office in this particular case, assisted by our detectives, and ultimately that's where we're going with this.
Is it typical for the state hospital to deny access to records in the county?
It's not the state hospital that's denying us access to the records.
Private?
No, we have been unable to obtain a search warrant or subpoena issued by a court yet that will allow us those.
But you
It
said-
is not them doing it.
Okay. Okay.
We have to have a subpoena to obtain someone's medical records in this particular case, search warrant or subpoena. In this particular case, we have been denied access to those so far by the courts. Again, it's early. Is it part of our investigation into this, and will we have them later when we go into the trial phase? We believe that we will. We'll continue to work on those, but we have not been granted access via subpoena yet by the courts to have those. There will likely be more hearings on that for the release of those.
Would you say that's uncommon for this type of crime to be denied that subpoena?
I would have to tell you that every day that I stand here, something unusual occurs or happens that I haven't dealt with before. And I think that it's safe to say this is probably one of those.
You have not dealt with this before.
Well, I think the whole thing in totality, Mike, is what I'm referring to. I mean, when you think about what has occurred and what people saw and what they witnessed, and now the records that we're trying to get just in totality, I think that the reason that for 3 days we have been bombarded with questions and phone calls is because it's something that doesn't happen often. Because we haven't seen it often, I think that some of these processes that we're looking at and trying to have happen instantaneously aren't occurring as quickly as we would like for them to for answers, but I think that they will be there. I appreciate you all. To the reporter on the front.